Okay guys, so today my video is kind of different. I'm going to be looking at my top 15 and the saddest part is I think I only saw about 15 movies that I can actually remember of, and I've ranked all of them from worst to best, so I'm going to be going over the 15 movies that I saw from worst to best. So, yeah. Okay, starting off as the worst movie that I saw last year, Zoolander 2. Did I see Zoolander 1? No. Do I care? No. Zoolander 2 was a really bad movie. The script was just so terrible and boring and unfunny and uninteresting and uninspired and unoriginal. It wasn't a good movie. There's just nothing redeeming about it. Like sometimes movies can be bad, but you know they'll at least be entertaining. This really wasn't entertaining at all. I mean, I'm struggling to find something good to say about this movie. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Okay, at number 14, so still pretty bad, is Storks. I did not like this movie at all. I didn't want to see it that much, but I did. Movies are based around like when there's a problem. So you've got your exposition and then your problem, which sends it into the story until you reach your climax and then the falling action. Okay, but like there's something called the initiating event that puts the whole story so it gains its momentum, that pushes you towards the climax. This movie didn't ever even need to have an initiating event. Like, the characters are so stupid and so poorly written that the entire movie just happens. And the character motivations are just so terrible and weak. And it wasn't entertaining. It's the same problem with Zoolander 2. Like, both of them are poorly written, but they could have at least been entertaining, but they also failed to do that, which is why they are so not good. Alright, so next up on the list, number 13, is XMen Apocalypse. If I could sum up this movie in one word, it would be disaster. This movie is a disaster. Superhero movies are supposed to be action movies with lots of action. This movie barely has any action at all, and when it does actually have action, the action is terrible. Terrible! Like, it's the worst action scenes I've seen in superhero movies, and it's just so bad. Like, this movie has a pretty interesting storyline with Magneto and his wife and kids, and it's pretty dark, and that part was actually interesting to me, but the rest of the movie is just so dumb. And I could forgive it for being dumb once again if it was entertaining, but it wasn't entertaining. It was so boring. Okay, next on the list, my friend recommended this movie to me, saying that it was a good movie. It was not. London Has Fallen comes in at number 12. This is pretty much just as dumb as X-Men Apocalypse and just as poorly written. I will give it props for at least trying to give character development, but it's so cliched and predictable that it barely even counts. Like, I knew pretty much everything that was gonna happen in the movie. Like, it was just so obvious. And then the action scenes weren't very good. Like, I always hear people complaining about how action scenes aren't very good nowadays and you can't understand what was going on. And this was just terrible. Like, I had no idea what was going on in the action scenes. Like, I get, oh, he's shooting someone, but it's just so incoherent and sloppy. Would not recommend. Okay, number 11 is controversial, sort of. Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice.
Why did you say that name? Martha, why did you say that name?
Stop! Please, stop!
Why did you say that name?
It's his mother's name. It's his mother's name.
Now, this movie, they have some cool Batman things, and so there's a few cool things, but in the end, it's just so stupid. Like, why was Doomsday in the movie? Why was Wonder Woman in the movie? Why did Batman hate Superman? Like, nothing in this movie makes sense. There's Flash in the movie for a second, and it's just so random, and it doesn't mean anything. Like I get they're trying to advertise the Justice League movie. They're trying to do a Marvel thing by advertising movies in the movie, but Marvel is like slightly more subtle about it. They're not super subtle, but they're at least a little bit subtle. Like in Marvel, it actually fits into the storyline, but in this, it was just so weird. Like, as I said earlier, there are some cool Batman action scenes. But speaking of that, speaking of action scenes, the Batman versus Superman fight, they only like actually versus each other for one part of the movie when the movie is called Batman versus Superman. It should be called Batman and Superman team up with Wonder Woman for some reason and then fight Doomsday, who shouldn't have been in the movie, because even if Lex Luthor's original plan had worked, he would have still had his backup plan of Doomsday, so then Doomsday would have been for nothing, and he can't just tell Doomsday, oh, go away. I don't know if I would recommend it, but I mean, I can definitely understand why some people would like it. Just in my opinion, I don't think it's that great. Now we're actually in my top 10, and number 10 is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So, my problem with this movie comes in as spectacle over story. Harry Potter, like the books, it was always about the story and the characters and the character interaction and how the characters were growing over time, and I love those books. They're so great. And in this movie, the story was weak, the characters were weak, it had a lot of special effects and some cool special effects, but it was just lots of special effects. Who cares about the story and money? It's not the worst movie ever. It does have some pretty good acting overall. It's not great. Number 9 is Star Wars Rogue One. Now this one I think is not necessarily spectacle over story, but spectacle over character. Like, the characters in this movie, they don't mean anything. The motivation isn't that great. The only interesting character is Jyn Erso's dad, who they did a great job with, because they explain that Jyn Erso's dad actually created the flaw in the Death Star that everyone complained about in the original Star Wars movie. And I think that's probably one of my favorite things about this movie. They showed that this battle between the rebels and the Empire was like a real thing that affected more people than just some people who can move objects with their mind and use lightsabers. Speaking of lightsabers, they are only used one time in the movie, and it is arguably my favorite scene. Also, I would say this is the best special effects I saw all year, and the sound effects. I really, really like the sound effects in this movie. I just wish they tried to do something with the characters, because the characters are lame in this. Number 8 might surprise you, Kung Fu Panda 3. This also surprised me. It was a much better movie than I expected. The story, it was entertaining. The story was good. The characters were alright. I mean, kind of what you would expect. But I enjoyed this movie. It's a fun movie, and I can just say that I would recommend it. But that's all about I have to say for it. Number 7, barely beating out Kung Fu Panda 3, is Kubo and the Two Strings. This movie is also entertaining. It's pretty good visually, and I overall liked it. The one thing is, the story was just so predictable. I mean, the jokes were kind of and it has really cool action scenes. I do want to point that out. This movie has a lot better action than X-Men Apocalypse or London Has Fallen. Alright, number 6, we're getting into the real good movies now. Doctor Strange. This is one of Marvel's better movies in terms of actual like character for Doctor Strange. I mean, he's not like a nice person by any standards. He's like an arrogant prick, but I kind of like that because that makes him more relatable for me. But it also helps for him to kind of grow with a character arc. And what was the most interesting part of this movie wasn't like the superhero stuff. Like, I didn't care about him fighting the evil wizards or whatever. I cared more about like his journey as a person. Like, he gets his hands all messed up and he just wants to fix them. So he goes out there to try and fix them, but he learns magic. So I mean, I would have been more interested in the movie just as kind of like a drama instead of as an actual superhero movie, but they had to make it a superhero movie. And on the parts when it is a superhero movie, they do have some really good special effects. It's probably the second best special effects of the year. Alright, now coming in at the top 5, and number 5 is Deadpool. Deadpool I like because it is a risk-taking movie. It takes lots of risks. It's a superhero movie, but Deadpool, he breaks the fourth wall, he swears, it's really gory. It's not super intense on story, but Deadpool is an interesting character, and it's really funny, really entertaining. One of the most entertaining movies of the year, which is why it's on this list. Like, based off of story and character merits, it wouldn't be on here, but it's just so entertaining. The action scenes are awesome. It really makes you hate the villain. The jokes aren't as good when you see it the second and third time, you know. You see it the first time and you're like, nah, that's part of fun. Number 4 for the third straight superhero movie in a row, and the fourth superhero movie on this list, you guessed it, Captain America Civil War. This is a really good movie. Just as entertaining as Deadpool, not as like risk-taking, but it's just a really good movie. I can't recommend it enough. It's on Netflix. I'm sure everybody here has Netflix, but go watch it for yourself and you will like it. Number 3 is Oh yeah. Number 3 is Zootopia, and this reminds me that I forgot to put Finding Dory on the list. Finding Dory was okay, not great. I'm going to give it honorable mention. Anyways, the actual number 3 is Zootopia, the best animated movie of the year by far, in my opinion. It's also so entertaining. I mean, the last 3 movies are probably the most entertaining movies of the year and funny movies of the year. Zootopia is such a funny, good, well-written movie. The characters, I mean, for a kids movie, it's incredibly well-written, and just as a movie in general, it's written pretty well. I mean, this is just a fun movie to watch. It's not like super crazy original, but the parts when it lacks in originality, it doesn't lack in entertainment, and the parts which it does have an originality are also entertaining, if you know what I mean. Okay, number 2 is a movie I saw recently that's also on Netflix. This movie is called Singh Street. You might not have heard of it, but this was a really enjoyable movie. Like I said, it's on Netflix, which pretty sure all of you have. It's well written, like really well written. The writing is the best part about this movie. It's just a really good movie. I would recommend it. Search for it on Netflix and watch it. Okay, the number 1 movie of the year is Arrival. Now, the past 2 movies, I went into them not knowing anything about them. Like, neither of those movies I had seen a trailer for or I knew anything about. Arrival, I had heard from my friends that it was about aliens, and it was really good. A lot of people told me it was good. Or not a lot, but a few people. I really liked this movie. I mean, there's a few small complaints I could have, but that's all just tiny nitpicking things, which I don't want to tear this movie apart because it's a really good movie. Some of you might not like it, but it's like a sci-fi drama about aliens coming to Earth, but instead of invading, it's about the humans trying to make contact with the aliens. It's very well made, very well acted, well written, well directed especially. Everything about this movie is pretty good. There's just a few minor details that I'm definitely not going to get into. It's not on Netflix, but I still recommend it enough that you should just buy it for like Blu-ray or DVD or whatever. But I definitely recommend Arrival. That is my #1 movie of the year. Tell me the movies that you guys saw. Leave your top 5, 10, whatever in the comments below. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Side note, I haven't uploaded in a while. Sorry about that. I do have some videos coming in the future, but iMovie, which I edit on, is being really difficult at the moment. But that's going to be it. See you later.